My name is Honey Daniels, and the beat of New York City is the only thing that keeps my heart pumping. By day, I'm behind the counter at a record store. By night, I'm teaching hip-hop to the neighborhood kids at the local community center. Between those shifts, I'm bartending at a club called Overdrive. It is exhausting, but every move I make is fueled by a singular dream. I want to be a professional music video choreographer. My parents, however, have different ideas. They want me to pursue a secure future in ballet, but the rigid structure of the academy feels like a cage. To me, dance isn't about perfect posture, it's about the raw energy of the street and the way a heavy bass line can make you feel alive. I spend my breaks practicing in the back of the shop, dreaming of the day someone notices the fire in my steps. I know I've got the talent, but in this industry, talent is only half the battle. You need a break. You need someone to actually look at you and see the potential. Every night at the club, I watch the dancers on the floor, picking up new moves and blending them with my own style. I'm waiting for that one moment where the music and the opportunity finally sync up. I don't just want to dance, I want to create the movements that the whole world will try to mimic. Everything changed during a regular shift at Overdrive. After the club slowed down, I stepped onto the floor with my best friend, Gina, just to let off some steam. We weren't performing for anyone, we were just being ourselves, letting the music dictate our bodies. I didn't realize that Michael Ellis, a high-powered music video director, was watching from the shadows. He saw something in my freestyle that he couldn't find in the polished, robotic routines of professional backups. He approached me with a business card and an invitation to an audition. I remember my hands shaking as I took that small piece of paper. It felt like a golden ticket. Gina was screaming with excitement, but I tried to stay grounded. I've had doors slammed in my face before, and the industry is known for breaking hearts. Still, the next morning, the world looked different. The subway screeches sounded like a symphony, and the sidewalk felt like a stage. I went to the audition, my heart hammering against my ribs like a drum. When the music started, I didn't think about the steps, I thought about the kids at the center and the joy of the movement. When Michael told me I had the job, I felt like I was finally flying. I was no longer just a girl from the Bronx with a dream, I was a choreographer on the rise. My life was about to transform in ways I hadn't even imagined yet. Stepping onto a professional set for the first time was like entering a different universe. The lights were blinding, the schedules were grueling, and the egos were even bigger than the production budgets. Michael started giving me more responsibility, moving me from a background dancer to a lead choreographer for some of the biggest names in the business. It was a whirlwind of private jets, fancy clothes, and constant rehearsals. I was finally making the money I needed to help the community center, which was always on the brink of shutting down. However, the gloss started to wear off when I realized the trade-offs. The industry didn't always care about the art, they cared about the image. I found myself in rooms with people who looked at me as a commodity rather than a creator. Michael, who I once viewed as my mentor and savior, began to show a side of himself that made me uneasy. He was manipulative and expected a level of loyalty that went far beyond professional boundaries. I had to learn how to navigate the shark-infested waters of show business while trying to keep my soul intact. I kept thinking about the kids back home, like Benny, who looked up to me. I wanted to show them that you could make it without losing yourself, but the pressure to conform was becoming an invisible weight on my shoulders. Every time I fixed a dancer's form, I felt the eyes of the executives judging my every move. As my fame grew, my connection to the neighborhood started to feel strained. I was spending less time at the center and more time in sterile dance studios. One afternoon, I walked past the court where the local kids were dancing to a boombox, and I realized I was losing my rhythm. I decided to bring the two worlds together. I started incorporating the kids from the block into my professional life, giving them a glimpse of what was possible. I brought Benny and his crew to a set, and seeing their faces light up under the studio lights reminded me why I started dancing in the first place. It wasn't for the fame or the money, it was for the community. But the higher I climbed, the more Michael tried to isolate me. He wanted me to forget where I came from and focus solely on the brand he was building for me. We clashed over the direction of a new video. He wanted something provocative and hollow, while I wanted something authentic and powerful. I realized that my success was being used as a tool to control me. I had to make a choice. Do I stay on this path of easy success and compromise my values, or do I risk everything to do things my way? The community center was facing eviction, and the stakes were higher than ever. I wasn't just dancing for myself anymore, I was dancing for the future of every kid who didn't have a voice. The tension with Michael finally reached a breaking point during a high-profile party. He made a move that was unprofessional and disrespectful, assuming that because he gave me my break, he owned me. I turned him down flat, standing my ground even as I saw the flicker of rage in his eyes. In that moment, I knew my professional life as I knew it was over. True to his nature, Michael began to freeze me out. Jobs that were promised suddenly vanished. Calls weren't returned. The industry, which had embraced me so warmly just weeks ago, turned cold and silent. It was a harsh lesson in how quickly the tide can turn when you refuse to play the game. I went back to the record store, feeling the sting of defeat, but also a strange sense of relief. I didn't have to pretend anymore. However, the reality of the community center's debt hit me like a physical blow. Without my big paychecks, there was no way to save the building. I felt like I had let everyone down. Gina stayed by my side, reminding me that I was a fighter, but it was hard to see a way out when all the doors were locked. I spent nights choreographing in the dark, trying to find a new path. I had the moves, I had the passion, but I lacked the platform. I realized that if I wanted a stage, I would have to build it myself from the ground up. I looked at the empty, dilapidated warehouse near the center and saw more than just bricks and dust. I saw a dream. If the big studios didn't want me, I would create my own space. I decided to put on a benefit dance search to raise the money needed to buy the warehouse and turn it into a permanent dance studio for the neighborhood. It was an ambitious plan, maybe even a crazy one, but I had nothing left to lose. I started scouting for talent in the places the industry ignored, the street corners, the schoolyards, and the local parks. I met dancers who had more heart in their pinky fingers than the professionals I had worked with in Los Angeles. We began rehearsing in the heat, using a cracked mirror and a beat-up stereo. The energy was electric. We weren't dancing for a camera or a director, we were dancing for our lives. My mother finally saw me teach, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of pride in her eyes. She realized that hip-hop wasn't just noise, it was a form of storytelling that required just as much discipline as ballet. We worked tirelessly, painting posters by hand and spreading the word through the grapevine. Every penny I had left went into the deposit for the event. This was my one shot to prove that the spirit of the streets was worth more than any corporate contract. I was the choreographer, the producer, and the heart of the movement. Securing the warehouse wasn't as easy as just having a vision. The building was falling apart, and the landlord was skeptical of a young woman with a dream and no corporate backing. I had to convince the local business owners to support us, showing them that an investment in the youth was an investment in the safety and future of the neighborhood. Some laughed, but others, seeing the dedication in my eyes, offered what they could. We spent our weekends cleaning out trash and scrubbing floors. My hands were blistered, and my muscles ached, but the rhythm never left me. Benny and his friends were there every step of the way, proving that they were more than just kids, they were a team. However, Michael Ellis wasn't done with me. He tried to sabotage our efforts by poaching my best dancers, offering them the fame he had once offered me. It was a test of loyalty for everyone involved. I told them I wouldn't blame them if they left, because I knew how hard it was to say no to the lights. But to my surprise, most of them stayed. They saw that what we were building was real, while Michael's world was just smoke and mirrors. We were creating a family, not a franchise. The pressure was mounting as the date of the benefit approached. If we didn't sell enough tickets, the warehouse would be sold to a developer, and the kids would be back on the street with nowhere to go. The local community started to buzz with anticipation. We were no longer just a group of kids dancing in a warehouse, we were a symbol of hope. I spent hours refining the choreography, blending the elegance of my ballet training with the raw, percussive energy of hip-hop. I wanted the performance to tell our story, the struggle, the rejection, and the ultimate refusal to back down. We were practicing until our shoes wore out, fueled by cheap pizza and pure adrenaline. I also had to manage the logistics of a large-scale event, dealing with lighting, sound, and city permits. It was a steep learning curve, but I found strength I didn't know I had. Chaz, a local barber who had become a friend and supporter, helped us get the word out to the older generation. We were bridging the gap between the youth and the elders. Even with all the progress, there were moments of doubt. I would lie awake at night, wondering if I was leading these kids into another disappointment. The shadow of Michael's influence still loomed large. I heard rumors he was trying to block press coverage of our event. But then I would go to rehearsal the next morning and see the passion on the dancers' faces. Their sweat was a testament to their belief in me, and I couldn't let them down. We were more than a dance troupe, we were a heartbeat that refused to be silenced by the industry's cold indifference. With only a week left until the benefit, the intensity reached a fever pitch. Every movement had to be sharp, every transition seamless. I was pushing the dancers harder than ever, and at times, the friction caused sparks. We had to learn how to move as one unit, a collective force that could command any stage. I spent my nights at the record store and my days at the warehouse, my life becoming a blur of rhythm and responsibility. I remember one specific afternoon when the music cut out, and instead of stopping, the dancers kept the beat by clapping and stomping. It was a powerful reminder that the music was inside us, not just coming from the speakers. We didn't need high-tech gadgets or expensive sets to create something beautiful. I also had to face the reality of my parents' expectations one last time. My mother came to the warehouse and watched from the doorway. She saw the way the kids looked at me, not just as a teacher, but as a leader. She finally understood that my path wasn't a rejection of her values, but an evolution of them. She handed me a bottle of water and a smile, a silent blessing that meant more than any trophy. We were ready. The costumes were simple but vibrant, reflecting the colors of the city. The warehouse, once a graveyard of broken dreams, was now a temple of movement. We were standing on the edge of something life-changing, waiting for the first note to drop. The morning of the benefit was unnervingly quiet. I walked through the warehouse, the scent of fresh paint and floor wax hanging in the air. This place represented every sacrifice I had made. I thought about the record store, the long nights bartending, and the moments when Michael Ellis made me feel small. I realized that those challenges were necessary to forge the person I had become. I wasn't just Honey the dancer anymore, I was a woman who knew her worth. The kids started arriving, their eyes wide with a mix of nerves and excitement. I gathered them in a circle, feeling the collective energy of their spirits. I told them that tonight wasn't about being perfect, it was about being present. I wanted them to leave everything on that floor. We weren't just performing for a crowd, we were performing for our right to exist and thrive in this city. The ticket line started to form outside, stretching around the block. People from all walks of life were showing up, neighbors, business owners, and even some of the industry people who had heard the whispers of something special happening in the Bronx. I saw Gina in the front row, her face beaming with pride. Everything was in place. The lights dimmed, the crowd grew silent, and I took a deep breath, feeling the familiar vibrations of the bass start to rattle my bones. This was our moment, our stage, and our story to tell. The music erupted, and so did the energy in the room. From the moment the first dancer hit the floor, the audience was captivated. It wasn't the sterile, choreographed for TV movement people were used to, it was a visceral explosion of culture and soul. I watched from the wings, my heart swelling as I saw Benny lead the younger kids with a confidence I hadn't seen before. They were athletes, artists, and storytellers all at once. The choreography we had worked so hard on flowed perfectly, a mix of breakdancing, crumping, and the fluid grace I had learned from my years in ballet. Each segment of the show represented a different aspect of our lives, the hustle of the street, the joy of friendship, and the pain of being overlooked. The crowd was on their feet, clapping in rhythm, their cheers echoing off the warehouse walls. I could see the skeptics in the audience being won over by the sheer talent on display. We were proving that you didn't need a multi-million-dollar studio to create art that moved people. In the middle of the set, I stepped onto the floor myself, feeling the connection between my feet and the boards. It was the most honest I had ever felt. Every move was a thank you to the people who supported me and a defiance against those who tried to hold me back. We were reclaiming our narrative, one beat at a time, and the Bronx was roaring back in approval. As the performance reached its peak, I looked out into the sea of faces and saw more than just an audience. I saw a community that had found its voice. The energy was so thick you could almost touch it. This wasn't just a dance show, it was a demonstration of what happens when you give people a chance to shine. I realized that my dream had evolved. It was no longer about seeing my name in the credits of a music video, it was about the legacy I was building in these kids. The warehouse was no longer just a building, it was a sanctuary where the next generation of dancers could feel safe to fail and bold enough to fly. I saw Michael Ellis in the back of the room, looking small and out of place in the middle of such genuine passion. He had the industry, but I had the heart. Whatever happened next, whether we raised every cent or fell short, I knew I had already won. I had stayed true to myself, protected my community, and found a way to dance on my own terms. The music slowed for a final, powerful moment of unison, and as we struck our final pose, the silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Then, the applause broke like a tidal wave. I stood there, sweaty and exhausted, with my family and my students by my side, knowing that this was only the beginning of our real journey.